From the moment Emma Parker woke up that morning, something inside her felt slightly out of place, like a picture frame hanging just a bit crooked, bothering her even when she tried to ignore it. She brushed her hair, tied it in a loose ponytail, and reminded herself she had a full day of design consultations ahead. But the small uneasiness stayed, resting in her chest like a quiet, stubborn whisper. Her phone buzzed with a message from Daniel Reed, her closest friend for years. Wine night with a few friends. Nothing big. The message was short. Too short. Normally, Daniel filled his texts with small jokes or updates about his day. But today, it felt like he was in a hurry to explain the evening before she even asked. Emma read the message twice, trying to understand why it bothered her. It wasn't the wine night, it wasn't the friends. It was the way he had worded it, careful, almost practiced. She sensed a wall, something new standing between them. And she couldn't help feeling it had been built quietly, without her noticing. She typed back, "Have fun," and added a smile emoji she didn't feel. She placed the phone aside and stood there for a moment, inhaling deeply before heading to work. She wanted to believe it was nothing, just a normal night with people he knew. But she also knew her instincts rarely failed her. And today, they felt louder. On her drive to the office, she tried to focus on her upcoming meeting. She had a client who wanted their living room redesigned to feel more warm, modern, and inviting. Normally, this kind of project excited her, but her mind drifted back to Daniel again and again. She remembered his small habits, how he always updated her about his plans, how he sent a quick message if he was heading somewhere late, how he asked about her day even when he was busy. It had become such a part of their friendship that a shift felt impossible to ignore. By noon, she had managed to distract herself with color palettes and sample fabrics. She even laughed with a coworker over lunch, trying to shake off the sinking feeling. But once she was alone again in her office, her thoughts returned to the same quiet question. Why did he feel the need to explain the evening so carefully? Emma tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he didn't want to type much. Maybe she was reading too deeply into one short message. Yet every time she tried to dismiss her thoughts, her heart answered with a soft ache. One she didn't know how to silence. When evening arrived, she planned a quiet night for herself. She cooked a small meal, played soft music, and lit her favorite lavender candle. She wanted to relax, but she found herself checking her phone every few minutes. She expected a quick message from him, something like, "Heading out now," or "Back home." Something that felt familiar. But the hours kept passing. 8 o'clock p.m., 9:15 p.m., 10:42 p.m. Still nothing. She felt silly for caring so much. They weren't dating. They weren't even close to that. They were friends, best friends, the kind who talked about everything and nothing, the kind who spent lazy afternoons together without planning, the kind who trusted each other more than anyone else. And yet, she had feelings she had never expressed. Feelings that made moments like this harder. She had always known she admired him. But somewhere along the years between shared coffees, long drives, and late-night confessions, those quiet pieces of admiration had turned into something softer, deeper, more complicated. She tried to hide it, convincing herself that friendship was more important. But now, as she stared at her silent phone, those hidden feelings returned. Stronger than she wished, she curled up on the couch and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Her apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the fridge. Outside, the Seattle rain hit the windows in a steady rhythm, almost matching her heartbeat. She closed her eyes and tried to remind herself that it was a normal night, that nothing was wrong, that Daniel wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. But her heart insisted that something felt different. At 11:27 p.m., she gave up and placed her phone face down on the table. She turned off the lights and sat in the dim glow of the street lamp, filtering through her curtains. She felt a heaviness, not dramatic or painful, but familiar. Like a worry she had carried before but never spoken aloud. The truth was simple. She wasn't afraid of him spending time with friends. She was afraid of being left behind without him even realizing it. It wasn't jealousy. It was fear of change. Fear of losing the quiet closeness they shared. Fear that someone else might walk into his life and take a place she didn't even admit she wanted. When the clock hit midnight, Emma finally stood up and forced herself to go to bed. She brushed her teeth, washed her face, and turned off the lights. Usually, before sleeping, Daniel sent a short message, "Good night" or "Talk tomorrow," which a small ritual she loved more than she admitted. Tonight, there was nothing. She lay on her side, staring at her curtains, swaying lightly with the breeze. She tried to convince herself the silence didn't matter, but the emptiness in her chest whispered otherwise, just before she drifted to sleep. A soft realization washed over her. It wasn't the message he didn't send. It was the change she felt coming. And the scariest part was that she didn't know what it meant, or what it would take away. Emma woke earlier than usual, the kind of early where the sky still held a faint blue and the world felt quiet. She didn't sleep well. Every hour of the night had been spent wondering why Daniel hadn't texted. She tried to tell herself it wasn't important, but the uneasiness followed her into the morning. When she picked up her phone, she expected nothing. Instead, she saw a single message from him. "Hey, last night ran late. I'll call you later." She read it slowly, waiting for the warmth she usually felt whenever he texted. But the message felt cold, almost like something written in a hurry. No smile, no small joke, no question about her morning. It wasn't like him. And she felt it immediately. She placed the phone down and tried to start her morning routine, making coffee, preparing breakfast, choosing clothes for work. But everything felt slower, as if her mind kept returning to that short message. She tried to force herself to focus. People had busy nights. People got tired. It didn't always mean something was wrong. Still, the silence from yesterday stayed with her like a shadow. By the time she reached her office, she had convinced herself to let it go. Work waited for her. Deadlines didn't care about her thoughts, and her clients didn't want a distracted designer. She opened her laptop, reviewed the day's schedule, and began answering emails. But when she looked at her reflection in her computer screen, she saw tired eyes staring back. Her coworker and friend, Lily Thompson, arrived a little later. Lily had a sharp eye for emotions. She could sense tension from across the room. It took her less than 10 seconds to notice something was wrong. "You look drained," Lily said, pulling out the chair beside Emma. "Rough night?" Emma hesitated. It felt awkward to admit she had spent half the night waiting for a message that never came. But Lily waited patiently, giving her that encouraging, soft look she always had when she knew something deeper was happening. "It's Daniel," Emma finally said in a low voice. "Went out with friends last night, said it was nothing big." Lily nodded. And something felt different. Emma replied, trying to find the right words. "He didn't message all night. Even his text this morning felt strange." Lily rested her elbow on the table. "Did you two fight?" "No," Emma replied quickly. "Nothing like that. I just felt him pull away." Lily watched her for a moment, thinking, "Emma, can I ask something? Don't take it the wrong way." "Sure. Are you maybe a bit more attached to him than you think?" Emma froze. No one had ever asked her that. Not directly, not in a way she couldn't escape. She looked away, her heart tightening. "He's my best friend." "Not what I asked," Lily said gently. Emma didn't respond. She didn't know how to explain the feeling she carried quietly for years. Feelings she never acted on because she didn't want to risk losing him. They had built a comfortable, safe friendship. A closeness she didn't want to break. After a moment, Lily touched her arm lightly. "It's okay to care, Emma, but you also need to protect yourself from assuming the worst. Talk to him. Don't guess." Emma nodded, but inside, her thoughts kept circling. She wasn't imagining this shift. She felt it deeply, like a small crack forming somewhere in a wall she had leaned on for years. The day moved on quickly. Meetings came and went. Clients discussed furniture and lighting preferences. Coworkers asked for advice. Emma did her best to stay present, but her attention drifted every time her phone buzzed. Even if it was only an email or a reminder, it wasn't until late afternoon that her phone finally lit up with Daniel's name. She stepped outside the office building before, answering, needing fresh air. The Seattle breeze was cool, carrying a faint scent of rain. "Hey," she said softly when she picked up. Daniel's voice was low, almost unsure. "Hey, sorry I didn't call earlier. Today got a little crazy." "It's okay," she replied. Though it didn't fully feel okay, there was a short pause on his end. A pause that felt heavy, like he was trying to choose the right words. "Emma, can we meet tomorrow?" he asked. Her heart skipped. "Sure. Why?" I need to talk to you. In person." Her breath caught slightly. "Is everything all right?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I'm not sure," he said quietly. "But I want to explain things properly." A strange coldness washed through her. "Okay, tomorrow then." "Yeah," he said. "Tomorrow." The call ended, and Emma stared at her phone, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. She walked slowly back inside, trying to understand what he meant. It wasn't like him to sound nervous. It wasn't like him to ask for a serious in-person talk unless something important was happening. She went through the rest of her work feeling even more distracted. By the time she reached home, the sun had set and the evening lights of the city reflected across the wet streets. She stood for a long moment in her living room, staring at nothing, simply thinking. What did he want to explain? What happened last night? Why did he sound unsure of himself? She tried to calm her thoughts by making dinner, but even slicing vegetables felt mechanical. Every part of her mind was focused on tomorrow, on Daniel, on the answers she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. Later, she sat by her window with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, watching the cars pass below. She reminded herself that Daniel wasn't the type to keep secrets to hurt her. He wasn't careless with her feelings. Whatever he needed to say, she knew it mattered to him. But that didn't stop the worries settling deep inside her. That didn't stop the fear that friendship was standing on a line, one that might shift forever, depending on what he said. And somewhere in the quiet of her apartment, one truth echoed through her heart. Tomorrow would change everything. She just didn't know how. Emma reached the lakeside cafe earlier than she needed to. The morning air carried a soft chill, and the sky hung heavy with gray clouds that looked like they might break into rain at any moment. She chose a small table near the window, the one she and Daniel often used. It had become their spot over the years, somewhere familiar, somewhere safe. Today, it didn't feel safe at all. She wrapped her hands around her warm cup of coffee, hoping it would calm the nervous shaking she felt in her fingers. She kept glancing at the door, waiting for Daniel to walk in. Her thoughts ran fast, one after another, each one feeding her worry. She didn't know what he wanted to tell her, but she could feel it was important. It's important. When Daniel finally arrived, she recognized the look on his face instantly. He wasn't angry, he wasn't distant, was conflicted, like someone who had spent the night thinking too hard and still didn't know the right answer. "Hey," he said softly, sitting down. "Hi," she replied, trying to smile. He ordered a coffee but didn't touch it when it arrived. Instead, he watched the steam rise from the cup, as if it might give him the words he needed. "I'm sorry if I worried you," Daniel began. "I didn't mean to." "It's all right," she said, although the tension in her voice betrayed her. "No, it's not," he continued, looking straight at her. "You know me well, so you could probably tell something was off." Emma nodded slowly. She didn't want to push him. She wanted him to take his time, to tell her what he needed to tell her without feeling pressured. "It was just wine and friends," he said. That part wasn't a lie. She listened carefully, waiting for the rest. "But one of my friends invited someone new," Daniel added. "Someone I hadn't met before." She felt her chest tighten, though she kept her face steady. Okay. She was nice, he said quietly. Easy to talk to, funny. The words hit her harder than she expected, like a quiet blow she didn't see coming. She swallowed gently. That's good. He heard the strain in her voice, and he looked down, almost guilty. I wasn't going to tell you about her, not because I was hiding something, but because I didn't know how to explain how I felt. Emma's heart beat faster. How you felt. He leaned back slightly in his seat, letting out a long breath. The whole time I was talking to her, I kept thinking about you. She blinked once, twice, she didn't speak. Afraid her voice might break. Daniel continued, his tone honest, unsure. I kept comparing every small thing she said to you. Not on purpose, it just happened. And I didn't like how confusing it felt. Emma lowered her gaze. Her emotions pulsed through her fear, relief, hope, confusional, tangled in one breath. That's why I sounded strange yesterday, Daniel said gently. I wasn't trying to pull away. I was trying to understand myself. Emma exhaled slowly. You could have told me. I know, he replied, but I didn't want to say the wrong thing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The cafe grew louder around them, clinking cups, quiet laughter, the hum of conversation. But their table felt still, separate from the noise. Emma lifted her eyes to him. What exactly are you trying to figure out, Daniel? He looked at her for a long moment, as if searching for the courage buried somewhere inside him. Us, he said simply. The word hit her like a sudden warmth she wasn't ready for. It spread through her slowly, carefully, almost fearfully. Us, she repeated, barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded. I didn't realize it until recently. But I think something changed. Or maybe it's been changing for a long time and I didn't notice. Emma's breath caught. She didn't move, afraid she might break whatever honesty he was offering. I don't want to hurt you, he said. That's the last thing I'd ever want. And that's why I didn't know what to say last night. I wasn't sure if telling you would make things better or make things harder. Emma stared at him, trying to understand everything he was saying. She felt exposed, like the emotions she kept hidden for years were suddenly visible. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Emma, what I felt last night wasn't about her. It was about the fact that even when someone new walked into the room, my mind went straight to you. Her heart throbbed painfully and beautifully at the same time. Daniel continued in a low voice, and I started wondering if I've been ignoring something important. Emma hesitated, then asked quietly, Daniel, what are you saying? He looked into her eyes with a sincerity she had never seen from him before. I'm saying I think I'm starting to understand why losing you scares me so much. A tremor ran through her. Lose me. You're not losing me. He shook his head gently. I know, but the thought of hurting you, or making things awkward, or changing what we have, it scares me more than I expected. She swallowed, her voice fragile. Daniel, you're not making sense. Are you saying you feel something? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he held her gaze, letting silence speak for him. Then he slowly stood up. Let's go for a walk, he said softly. I want to tell you everything, but not here. Emma hesitated only a second before standing up to Sads. As they stepped out of the cafe, the air felt colder, sharper. A small breeze brushed her hair. The lake beside the cafe glimmered under the soft daylight, the water calm and still. Daniel walked beside her, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense with the weight of what he hadn't said yet. Emma matched his pace, her heart unsteady, each step filled with the fear of what the next moment might reveal. She didn't know what truth waited for her. She didn't know if it would bring relief or heartbreak. But she knew one thing, the way he looked at her today. Something had changed, and she couldn't turn away from it now. Emma walked beside Daniel along the quiet lakeside path, the water still and silver under the cloudy sky. Every step felt heavy with expectation. She wanted answers, but she was scared of them too. Daniel kept his hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly tense. As if carrying a weight he had avoided for too long, They walked in silence until they reached a wooden bench facing the lake. Daniel stopped, took a slow breath, and nodded toward it. "Let's sit." Emma sat carefully, her heartbeat louder than the sounds around them. Daniel sat beside her, leaving a small space between them, not far, but not close enough to ease her nerves. He stared at the lake, gathering his thoughts, before finally turning to her. "I didn't sleep much last night," he said softly. "Not because of the wine, not because of the people I met, but because of something I realized." Emma waited quietly, afraid to interrupt him. Daniel looked down at his hands. "That woman I met? She was kind. There was nothing wrong with her. But talking to her made me notice something I've been avoiding for a long time." He lifted his eyes to Emma's, and for the first time, she saw fear in them, gentle, honest fear. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." Emma felt her breath tighten. Her hands folded on her lap, fingers trembling slightly. "It wasn't jealousy," he continued. "It wasn't comparing. It was something deeper. I realized that every time I try to imagine letting someone new into my life, something stops me." He paused. "And that something is you." Emma's heart thudded painfully. "Daniel," he shook his head softly, not to silence her, but as if admitting something to himself. "I didn't understand it before. I thought we were just close friends. I thought I just relied on you more than most people rely on their best friend." He breathed out slowly. "But last night, when I was talking to someone who could have been potential, someone who was interested, the only face in my mind was yours." Emma's eyes softened, but she didn't speak. She wanted him to finish. "I kept thinking how she didn't laugh like you, how she didn't look at me the same way, how she didn't know the things you do." He lowered his voice. "I wasn't comparing her because she wasn't enough. I was comparing her because you've become everything." Emma felt her chest tighten with emotion. Her lips parted slightly, but words struggled to escape. Daniel continued, his voice raw, honest. "I kept asking myself why it bothered me so much when she smiled at me. And the answer was simple. Because it made me realize what I've been afraid to admit." He turned fully toward her, eyes steady even as they carried uncertainty. "Emma, I think I've been falling in love with you without realizing it." Her breath caught sharply. She stared at him, stunned, feeling warmth spread through her, slow and overwhelming. For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade, the lake, the wind, the soft sounds of distant traffic. All she could hear was her heartbeat and his quiet confession. Daniel swallowed. "I was scared to tell you. Scared of ruining everything. Scared of losing the one person in my life I trust the most." He looked down. "And I didn't want you to think I was saying this because I met someone else. This has nothing to do with her. It's about understanding what you mean to me." Emma felt her eyes sting with emotion. She inhaled slowly. "Daniel, you should have told me." He gave a small, helpless smile. "I didn't realize it myself until last night. And when I did, I panicked. That's why I didn't text. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much." Emma looked away for a moment, trying to calm the rush of feelings inside her. The lake shimmered softly. She wiped a small tear at the corner of her eye before facing him again. "You weren't the only one scared, okay?" she whispered. Daniel froze, his eyes searching hers. "Emma?" She nodded slowly. "I felt something for a long time too. Something I didn't know how to explain." She breathed out shakily. "I kept telling myself we were just friends, that I shouldn't ruin what we have, that I should be happy with our closeness." Her voice softened. "But whenever I imagined you with someone else, I felt the same fear you're talking about." Daniel stared at her, his chest rising with relief he didn't dare express yet. "You felt that too?" She nodded again. "I didn't want to lose you, Daniel. Not even a little." He reached for her hand slowly, carefully, like he was afraid she might pull away. When his fingers touched hers, she felt a warm rush through her arm. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand so their fingers interlocked gently. A soft smile formed on Daniel's lips. "Fragile but deeply real. I should have said something sooner. We both should have," Emma replied quietly. They sat together in the quiet morning, hands intertwined, the tension that had been building for days slowly melting into something new, something tender, something honest. Daniel squeezed her hand lightly. So, where do we go from here? Emma looked at their hands, then at him. One step at a time, she said. We don't need to rush anything, but we don't have to pretend anymore. His smile grew warmer. I'd like that. She returned his smile, feeling a soft glow spread through her chest. For the first time in days, the heaviness inside her lifted. Daniel exhaled deeply, almost laughing at himself. I spent all night worrying I'd lose you. And I spent all night worrying you already had, Emma said gently. He shook his head, still holding her hand. I'm not going anywhere. Emma leaned her shoulder against his, not too close, just enough to show she wasn't afraid of the closeness anymore. The lake breeze brushed past them, cool and fresh, like a quiet new beginning. They sat that way for a long moment, watching the water move softly, neither wanting to break the peace between them. Finally, Daniel whispered with a small smile, it really was just wine and friends. But I knew better too. Emma laughed softly, leaning closer. Good, because I wasn't ready to lose my place. You're not losing anything, Daniel said gently. If anything, you're becoming something even more important. And as they sat there, side by side, fingers intertwined, the truth was clear. They weren't just friends anymore. They were the beginning of something deeper, something that had been waiting quietly inside both of them for years. A beginning shaped by honesty, courage, and the simple, quiet truth. They loved each other,